Right now, 150 miles up in the air, there were thousands of machines silently falling towards Earth. Not flying, falling. They fall so fast and perfectly that they'll miss Earth forever. And that missing on purpose is the single greatest trick in all of physics. If you haven't guessed already, I am talking about orbits. Hi everybody! Welcome back to the Space Blast, and my name is Sathya Kunjunagi, and I'll be your host for today's video. With that, let's talk about orbits. So, what is an orbit? Well, an orbit is a curved, repeating path that an object takes around another object in space, like a planet orbiting a star, a moon orbiting a planet, or a satellite orbiting a planet, all because of gravity. But that's the what. The why is where it gets crazy, because you can't just enter into orbit. Orbit is a balance that you have to achieve. It's like walking on a tight rope, except the rope is invisible and made of physics. So, how does an orbit work? Well, here's where things get interesting. Because you see, when you're in an orbit, there are going to be two forces fighting against each other. First, you've got gravity, the force that pulls everything down to Earth. And on the other side, you've got the object's forward momentum, the speed at which the object travels forward. If you have too little momentum, the object is overcome by gravity and falls down to Earth. But if you have too much momentum, the object speeds away from Earth, escaping Earth and heading into the cosmos. But if you hit the orbit just right, you're now in a permanent state of free fall. Basically, you're going to be going forward, falling down just as fast as Earth curves, putting you in a circular orbit. And trust me, humans figured this out way before satellites existed. Sir Isaac Newton liked to think of it as a cannon on top of a mountaintop. If you fire the cannonball will fall down to Earth, as we all know. Fire it even faster and it'll land even further. But fire it just right, and that cannonball will enter a speed called orbital velocity, where it will enter orbit around Earth. But if you fire it even faster, now it's at escape velocity, the speed required to escape Earth, and it'll escape Earth and enter the cosmos, never to come back to Earth. So, what exactly is the sweet spot? Well, assuming that you're at 150 miles up in the air, which is around 242 kilometers, you need a speed of 17,000 miles per hour. But here's a quick, beautiful quirk. You see, the higher up you are, the less fast you have to go. Because Earth's gravity gets weaker the higher up you are, satellites up in geostationary orbit can cruise at a steady pace, while satellites down in low Earth orbit have to absolutely book it to keep themselves in Earth's orbit. So, how do we send satellites up there? Well, it all starts with the rocket launch, when the rocket launches and starts heading up vertically to break out of the thick, dense bottom atmosphere. Once it breaks out of the atmosphere, it starts to gradually pitch over to obtain that sideways speed, its orbital velocity. Once in space, its own sideways speed puts it in orbit. And since there's no air in space, which means no friction, gravity is doing the trick. The moon follows the same principles as well. It just keeps falling and falling and falling with nothing but gravity keeping it in its orbit. Now, why do astronauts float in space? Now, you may be asking, Sathvik, how is that related to the video at all? But I'll get to there in a moment. Which brings me to the part that messes with everyone's brains. Weightlessness. When you see an astronaut floating on screen, they're not floating because there's no gravity. No. In fact, 90% of Earth's pull is still there on the International Space Station. The real reason why they're floating is because they're free falling down to Earth. Yep, that's right. Earth's gravitational force and their spacecraft's centrifugal force cancel each other out, putting them in a permanent state of free fall. So no, they're not floating. They're falling with commitment. Which is why this whole system is important for satellites. Satellites do jobs that we can't do on Earth. And their job determines where they're going to be parked in orbit. Which brings us to the real meat of this video. The different neighborhoods of space orbits. Now, there are many different kinds of orbits around Earth, but for the purpose of this video, I will be talking about only 3 major orbits. For the first orbit, we've got low Earth orbit, or LEO. This is where all the busy action happens. If you were to think of orbits as layers, low Earth orbit would be at the bottom. This is where all of your famous spacecraft and satellites stay at, like the International Space Station, the Hubble Space Telescope, or even SpaceX's Starlink satellites. But it's not a place to be lazy at. Because low Earth orbit is at the very bottom, it's at the very top of Earth's atmosphere, and that drag slowly steals the satellites' forward momentum, slowing them down and putting them on a course to intercept Earth. So, space companies have to burn extra fuel if they want to keep their satellite up in orbit, or accept that their satellite has an expiration date. Moving one layer up, we'll encounter our second type of orbit, medium Earth orbit, or MEO. And MEO is dramatic. This is where the Van Allen belt exists. If your spacecraft doesn't have special shielding, the radiation from the Van Allen belt will fry up all of your satellite's electronics. And the reward? This is a perfect spot for GPS navigation. Yes, every time you go to Google Maps to find directions to your destination, that's all powered by satellites in medium Earth orbit. And now the orbits that confuse everyone up. Orbits? I thought you said orbit because there are 3 major orbits. Stay with me, I'll get to that. Moving one layer above medium Earth orbit, we're going to hit the confusing twins, geosynchronous and geostationary orbits. Oh my god, what's the difference? Well, let's start with geosynchronous orbit. In geosynchronous orbit, your orbit speed is going to match the same time it takes Earth to orbit around its axis relative to the background stars, which is 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4 seconds. But if you're in geostationary orbit, on the other hand, you're not only going to be synced to Earth's rotation, you're going to be lined up perfectly on the equator, and you're going to be marked at one exact point. So you can hover over a city, and you're going to stay in that city because you match the same rotation as Earth. Not only that, but you have to be at a specific altitude of 35,786 kilometers or 22,236 miles up in the air. Remember, the golden rule with these orbits: all geostationary orbits are geosynchronous, but not all geosynchronous orbits are geostationary. That's the difference for telecommunication satellites, because if you want to send a telecommunication satellites to orbit, most likely you're going to send it to geostationary orbit, where you can have it lined up perfectly with the ground station to keep sending the signal day and night without having to worry about orbiting Earth. So let's connect the dots and quickly recap on what happened in today's video. Starting at the very bottom of all the orbits, we have low Earth orbit. This is the orbit where you have the International Space Station, all your weather satellites, and all your ground scanning satellites. They're low enough to see detail, but high enough to be practical. Moving one layer up, we have medium Earth orbit. This is the navigation lane. Without this orbit, you'd not have your Google Maps GPS that helps you get from point A to point B. And moving to the top of it all, we have geosynchronous orbit, not geostationary, because all geostationary orbits are geosynchronous. This orbit is the one orbit keeping the entire world connected. a telecommunication satellite locking on to one specific ground station, keeping you connected with your family. 3 orbits, 3 different jobs, but they all follow one principle, and it's the first thing you learn in today's video. It's that these satellites are not floating, they're falling. So the next time you see a star that's not moving in the night sky, remember, it probably is a satellite, and every day it's falling down to Earth, but every day it chooses to miss on purpose. And I think that's the sweetest thing physics has to offer. Sometimes the strongest love always falls down for you, even if they never quite land. Thank you so much for joining the Space Blast once again. And if you like this content that you're seeing, please make sure to hit the like and subscribe button and smash that notification bell to receive daily updates on future content that I post. Thank you so much for joining the Space Blast. You rock! Until then, see you next time.